December 3, 1984. 12:40 a.m. A maintenance worker at Union Carbide's pesticide plant in Bhopal, India notices the pressure gauge on tank 610 climbing. It reads 10 psi. Normal is 2. He assumes it's broken. By 12:50 a.m., it reads 30 psi. Workers near the tank hear a loud hissing sound and feel heat radiating from the concrete. At 1 a.m., a safety valve ruptures. 40 tons of methyl isocyanate, one of the most toxic chemicals ever synthesized, begins venting directly into the night air over a city of 900,000 people. Most are sleeping. The gas is heavier than air, so it rolls through the streets like an invisible flood, pouring into homes through windows and doors. People wake up choking, their eyes burning, their lungs filling with fluid. They run outside, which makes it worse. They're running directly into the cloud. Some collapse within minutes. Others make it a few hundred meters before their bodies give out. By sunrise, the streets are lined with corpses. At least 3,800 people are dead. But the real number is probably closer to 16,000. And 500,000 more are poisoned, their lungs scarred, their lives shortened. This is what really happened at Bhopal. Union Carbide Corporation opened the Bhopal plant in 1969, and at the time, it seemed like progress. India was pushing for self-sufficiency in agriculture, and that meant pesticides. The plant manufactured 7, a carbamate insecticide that required methyl isocyanate, mic, as a key ingredient. Mic is viciously reactive. It boils at 39 degrees Celsius. It reacts with water, with heat, with metal contaminants, with itself if the temperature rises even slightly. Union Carbide's sister plant in Institute, West Virginia stored mic in small tanks, never more than a few tons at a time, and kept those tanks refrigerated below 0 degrees Celsius. Bhopal did the opposite. The plant stored mic in massive 15,000-gallon tanks and relied on refrigeration units to keep them cool. But by 1984, the Bhopal plant was failing. 7 sales had collapsed. The plant was operating at less than 50% capacity and losing money every month. Union Carbide's American executives wanted to sell it. The Indian subsidiary wanted to keep it running. The compromise was cost-cutting. Maintenance budgets were slashed. The refrigeration unit for the mic tanks had been shut off for 5 months to save on electricity. The flare tower, designed to burn off accidental gas releases, was under repair. 4 of the 6 safety systems were either disabled or malfunctioning. And the workforce had been cut in half. The problems were not invisible. Workers had been complaining for years. In 1981, a phosgene gas leak killed 1 worker. In 1982, 24 workers were exposed to mic, several hospitalized. Reports from Union Carbide's own safety inspectors in 1982 identified 61 hazards at the plant, including concerns about mic storage and the lack of emergency plans. Local journalists had written about the dangers. A city official had warned that the plant was a disaster waiting to happen. Nothing changed. By late 1984, Tank 610 had been sitting idle for months, still holding 42 tons of mic. It should have been emptied or transferred, but that cost money and required functioning equipment. The plant's managers decided to leave it. On the night of December 2, a supervisor ordered a maintenance crew to flush out clogged pipes near the mic tanks using water. The pipes were old. Some of the valves were known to leak. A slip blind, a metal plate used to block off sections of pipe, should have been installed to prevent water from reaching the tanks. It was not. No one knows if this was negligence, miscommunication, or deliberate cost-cutting. What's certain is that water began leaking into tank 610 sometime around 10:30 p.m. Mic and water react exothermically. The temperature inside the tank started climbing. So did the pressure. It's 12:40 a.m. The control room operator sees the pressure gauge needle climbing and taps it with his finger, assuming it's stuck. The tank's refrigeration unit is offline. The vent gas scrubber. designed to neutralize any leaked mic, is offline. The flare tower is offline. Every backup system that could stop what's about to happen is either broken or turned off. By 12:50 a.m., the gauge reads 30 psi. Workers near the tank hear a sharp, high-pitched scream of metal under pressure. One worker runs to alert the control room. Another tries to activate the vent gas scrubber manually. It doesn't work. The temperature inside tank 610 is now above 200 degrees Celsius. The mic is boiling. The pressure is approaching 55 psi, far beyond what the tank was designed to hold. At 1 a.m., the rupture disc on the safety valve blows. 40 tons of superheated methyl isocyanate gas begins venting into the atmosphere at a rate of 2,000 kilograms per hour. The gas exits through a stack only 33 meters tall, barely taller than the surrounding slums. A worker tries to spray the gas cloud with water from a hose. The pressure is too weak. The water doesn't even reach the cloud. The wind is calm. The gas doesn't disperse. It spreads outward in every direction, hugging the ground, invisible and odorless until it's too late. People described it like drowning on dry land. The gas burned their eyes, their throats, their lungs. It caused immediate pulmonary edema, fluid flooding the alveoli. People vomited, convulsed, collapsed. Entire families died together in their homes. The nearest hospital, Hamidia, was overwhelmed within an hour. Doctors had no idea what they were treating. Union Carbide refused to disclose Mike's toxicity data, calling it a trade secret. They suggested the gas was merely an irritant, like tear gas. It was not. Autopsies showed lungs destroyed, tissues liquefied. By morning, the railway station was packed with 50,000 people trying to flee. The official death toll reached 3,800 within a week, but mass cremations and burials without records mean the real number is unknown. Some estimates put it at 16,000 dead in the immediate aftermath. 500,000 people were exposed. Thousands were left with permanent lung damage, blindness, neurological disorders. The legal battle dragged on for years. Union Carbide CEO Warren Anderson flew to Bhopal, was briefly arrested, then released and allowed to leave the country. He never returned. In 1989, Union Carbide settled with the Indian government for $470 million, about $500 per victim. The site was never properly cleaned. In 2001, Dow Chemical acquired Union Carbide and refused to assume liability. The groundwater around the plant remains contaminated with heavy metals and toxic chemicals to this day. Bhopal changed nothing and everything. In the immediate aftermath, countries around the world passed right-to-know laws, requiring companies to disclose what hazardous chemicals they store and use. The U.S. passed the Emergency Planning and Community Right-to-Know Act in 1986. The EU implemented the Seveso II directive. But enforcement has always been the problem. Industries still lobby against transparency. Regulations get weakened over time. Cost-cutting still happens. In 2005, a BP refinery explosion in Texas killed 15 workers after years of deferred maintenance. In 2013, a fertilizer plant explosion in West Texas killed 15 more after regulators failed to inspect it. These disasters follow the same pattern: profitable companies cut costs, disable safety systems, ignore warnings, and then express shock when people die. Bhopal should have been a line in the sand. Instead, it became a case study in corporate impunity. The lesson is not that accidents happen. The lesson is that they are allowed to happen because the cost of prevention is seen as greater than the cost of human life. 40 years later, people in Bhopal are still dying from cancers and birth defects linked to the contamination. And not a single Union Carbide executive has spent a day in prison for what happened that night. The Bhopal disaster was not an accident. It was the inevitable result of a system that prioritized profit over safety, that treated workers and neighbors as acceptable losses, and that allowed a corporation to walk away from the worst industrial disaster in history with barely a scratch. That's the real horror. Not that it happened, but that it was allowed to happen. And that it could happen again.